Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we are back with another How to Train Your Dragon figure. This time we've got ourselves Rumblehorn, and this one looks pretty cool. The weird thing about this is I can find the listing on Target's website for it, but it will not allow me to actually purchase it unless I go to the store. I don't understand why, but when I went to my store, they had this as well as one other dragon that is in this line that I was also unable to order on the website. So, of course, I'm going to get some reviews up for these guys. You can see that this is a bit of a smaller dragon. This one is actually only 10 bucks, and I think this is maybe the only way that you can get this one. It's the only set that I've seen it in. Like some of the other ones, like Gronkle is actually in this line as well, but as we already know from my previous review, Gronkle also has a different figure. That one's actually in 3 different sets. It's in a standalone release like this, it's in the set with the human with fish legs, and it's also in the set with quite a few other dragons. But the packaging and everything looks pretty much as they have the entire way through. Here on the back you can now see again the other figures that are in this wave, in this line as well, again with a Gronkle as well as a Toothless, and then of course we've got Skrill and Rumblehorn. So let's pop this open and check it out. So here is our Rumblehorn figure once you actually take it out of the packaging, and just like most of these dragons have so far, I think this one looks pretty darn nice. It definitely has a pretty appealing look to it, and I would say is probably my favorite design as far as the dragons go in the $10 range line. I think that it just looks super cool. Not my favorite colors in the world, but it looks okay for what it is. I'm going to readjust the camera here just briefly so that we can get a closer look at this one. So when we bring it up nice and close to the camera, you can see again the head sculpt looks pretty cool. We've got a really nicely painted eye with a red and a black pupil. Shockingly, no decals for this one. You have the mouth sculpted in an open position. We can see some seams where the mouth is kind of connected. Unfortunately, it does not have an articulated jaw, and I really kind of expected it to have an articulated jaw, but it does not. There's also a seam that moves up and over the top of the figure, as well as a seam moving in the neck, which kind of gives you the ability to swivel the head left and right, giving us at least a little articulation in the neck, but I really would have liked an articulated jaw on this one. There's also a seam moving over the forehead, basically, of the dragon, which is unfortunate. So there are some unsightly seams on this one, but I guess it could be worse. You can see the tongue on the inside of the mouth sculpted pretty decently, also textured fairly decently. There is some nice detail on the inside of the upper side of the mouth, but no actual paintwork up there. But we do have like a dark pinkish or purplish tone for the inside of the mouth down here. You can also see all of the teeth are sculpted quite nicely and also painted quite nicely, which is a plus. Obviously, they're going to be a separate piece, I think, that's added in, so it'd be pretty hard to make that sloppy, but still looks pretty good for what it is. We do also have some horns up here on the top of the head of the dragon. They are painted with a grayish tone, and they look quite nice as well. The texturing to the face is pretty well done. You also have another horn leading off of the lower jaw, which also is painted with that same grayish tone, and also looks quite nice. We do have a yellowish tone pick up in the lower jaw and move down along the underside, the underbelly of the dragon. We can see it leads out into the tail before disappearing. We also have some okay looking texturing as well as more seams here on the underside. Moving up into the side of the dragon, you have kind of some scruffy texturing up here. My camera just about freaked out there because it for some reason really does not like greens, and the majority of the color of this one is a light green. As you move up here to the top though, you do have some flashiness as far as the colors go, with some quite nice looking blues and purples that move along the upper side of the dragon. I'm not, again, a massive fan of the colors of this one, but I think it looks okay. As you move down along the back, you have very bumpy skin texture following along the upper side. It does become finer as you move down into the side of the dragon. The texturing continues to look quite nice the entire way through. The wings are quite small for this one, and you can see a pretty interesting design as you move out into the wings with some bluish tones, and then you can also see some darker blues as they kind of fade out as you get closer to the endings of the wings, which does look pretty decent. The figure does not really have like that rubbery real feel. It's definitely a little flexible, but it's not quite that rubber real feel like we had seen on some of the other dragons. You can see the undersides of the wings as well. Nicely textured for the most part, kind of, some areas are actually a little muted, but it looks okay, but it's just basically one solid tone of this light green, which is the primary body color. Moving down into the front leg, we again have some nice looking skin detail with some decent texturing and skin wrinkles and stuff like that. You also have leg articulation forward and back, and you can see the foot sculpt looks pretty nice. We have some decently sculpted claws down there, which do have a nice little satin shine to them, but no actual nail paint. Also, the wings articulate, but I think that was pretty obvious. They do go up and down and also can swivel, so you can turn them pretty much as all the dragons have had going on the entire way through. Leading back into the rear leg, you've got some muscle definition shining right there. We can also take note to the knee, and as you move down, again, you've got a bit of a bigger foot here on the back foot. The toes are sculpted decently, and again, the nails have a bit of a shine, and of course, the same type of articulation for the rear leg. Then we lead out into the tail, and the tail looks pretty okay. I mean, the detail is definitely a bit different when it comes to the overall appearance out here on the tail compared to the rest of the body, and the tail does curve, but one thing that's quite interesting is this is the first time we've had any sort of opposable tail for these figures, because once you get to this point, you do have at least a little bit of articulation in like a swivel effect where you can turn the tail and basically position it however you would like, and once you have it positioned correctly, you can see you do have a pretty cool curve to the tail as you lead out. And then you also have a bit of a club tail on the ending of the tail with that same darker grayish tone that we saw on the horns, and a very bumpy look to that club tail. Of course, the opposing side's going to look pretty close to the same, but the biggest difference would be the positioning of the legs, as they are in a little bit of a different position compared to what we saw on the initial side. But that's definitely a really cool dragon. It's not the greatest dragon in the line, but when it comes to the $10 range figures, I think this is probably the coolest one. As far as a size goes, for a length, I don't know how to actually get the accurate length. I guess we'll go under the wing from the tail to the head, about 8.5 inches roughly, or around 21.5 centimeters, and then to the top of the back, about 3.25 inches, or a little over 8 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, Robert Muldoon, and the Collect A Human Being next to our dragon. And you can see again, it's definitely one of the smaller dragons in the line, but not the smallest. So far, the smallest is definitely Gronkle, but this one's not a whole lot larger than Gronkle. And to show you that, there is Gronkle next to Rumblehorn, and you can see again that there is a bit of a difference in size, with Rumblehorn being quite a bit larger. Rumblehorn almost reminds me of a Pacific Rim kaiju, especially with that head sculpt, very, very similar. But for another comparison, we've also got the Deadly Natter here, and we can see that figure is just a little bit longer, and just a little bit more body mass when it comes to like the wingspan and stuff than our Rumblehorn. Then when it comes to our only Toothless we've reviewed so far, we have the Plasma Blast Toothless next to Rumblehorn, and obviously Rumblehorn is going to be a bit smaller. And for the final comparison, we have the Titan Red Death, and as you can see, that figure is gigantic next to our much smaller Rumblehorn. So another really fun dragon in this line, definitely another really fun figure. I feel like this one definitely could have had a few improvements though, like the seams are, expected on action figures and stuff, but the seams on this one are just a little bit too visible and a little bit too obnoxious in some areas. Also, the lack of an articulated jaw, I feel like, is just kind of silly. I feel like there's really no reason they couldn't have included that, and it would have definitely helped when it comes to the overall articulation, playability, and display factor of the figure. Past that point, though, the sculpt is pretty well done. It definitely looks quite nice, has a lot of fine detail, a lot of impressive detail. The paintwork is okay, even if I'm not a huge fan of the color scheme of it. It's fairly nicely applied, does have some nice designs and stuff on the wings, which don't look that realistic. They do look a little childish, but it's not that bad, I guess. And again, it is a children's toy, so it's kind of to be expected that it wouldn't look super high quality. It's not like it's meant to be an adult collectible, but it does feature also a little articulation, which is fairly fun. Nothing over the top, but at least we have a little bit of articulation in the tail this time. So again, it's an alright figure. It's not incredible by any means. It's not as impressive as some of the others in the line, but it's fun for what it is. If you are interested, I will include a link in the description to the listing on Target, so you can at least see if it's telling you have it in store, and then maybe head to your local Target and grab it from there. And of course, like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.